Hello and welcome to the Resilience Movement podcast. I'm your host, Donna Moulds, and around here we talk about what it really takes to bounce back from life's curveballs and step into a life that you truly deserve. This isn't about surface level positivity or pretending everything's fine. It's about real talk, real tools, and real transformation. Whether you're rebuilding after loss or navigating big shifts or just feeling called to more, you're in the right place because resilience is not something you're born with, it's something you build. And today's episode is a special one. We're diving deep into a topic we don't talk about enough: men's mental health, emotional well-being, and what it really means for a man to lead his own life from a place of strength and self-awareness. I'm joined by someone who's doing the work and giving back, a man who holds a space for others with courage, clarity, and compassion. He's a coach, a straight talker, and someone who's doing powerful work with men all over the country. Welcome to the Resilience Movement, Stephen Cole from Emotional Wisdom.
Excellent. Very pleased to be with you. It's interesting, some people appear to be born with resilience and then they lose it. That's a completely different thing. It's amazing how secure some people can be until suddenly it's all gone again. And this is where I find most of my clients, and they say, well, I was fine. And then something happened.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just, something in life blindsides you and yeah, you find yourself I know I've lost tools over the years and had to rebuild them, rebuild skills that I had before. So it's interesting. Um, but I want to get to know you in this podcast. So I've got 10 questions for you. And of course, if anyone knows my podcast, they know that I digress many times and can get off track.
Oh,
So I do like
how
to write
very
questions.
ADHD of you. We're going to have
Um,
lots of trouble.
that's fine. We'll both be in the same boat, right?
Yeah.
So let's get to know Stephen. Let's go back to the beginning. What pulled you into coaching and why specifically men? And I do know it's not just men, but why specifically men?
It was never supposed to be specifically man, but being a man and coaching being a very congruent kind of industry where it's not just the science that you're applying, but your experience. And I've come from a very specific pattern of events that I found is extremely common. And 90% of my clients have come from a very similar background. I can virtually describe how they're feeling, what they've experienced. And then obviously, because of that, the pathway forward for them is a lot clearer, seeing as I have a very specific niche that way. I do deal with things on the fringe of relationships, not just anxious, preoccupied, fearful avoidance, dismissive avoidance on the other side,
Mhm.
and both genders as well.
Tell me a bit more about dismissive avoidance.
Dismissives are the most or the least understood and most maligned people in our society simply because of their emotional needs and communication methods are, well, they're different and in many areas not as developed because at a very young age, in most cases, a lot of their development was locked down because
Mhm.
of severe trauma. As
Right.
a result, they really don't have, unfortunately, the model for communication, for teamwork, for conflict resolution. They love the idea of a team. They love the idea of company and being able to do things together, but they don't know what it looks like. So when they come into a relationship, normally a dismissive, they will attract and anxious because of the differences in the strengths. It's the strengths that each other have will be a biological bond.
Mhm.
And anxious is very good at expressing, also at being calm within chaos. All the things that a dismissive can't do. They when they are triggered into chaos, they withdraw. They don't want anything to do with it. And on the other hand, a dismissive is amazing at taking a thought, putting it aside, and getting on with whatever they need to do, whereas an anxious is so preoccupied with a thought, there's nothing else that they can put their mind on. So the two differences attract each other. The
Hmm.
problem is that it's the weaknesses between the two that drive them apart. And if they don't understand each other, in the end, from my perspective, coming in from the men's perspective, is understanding that as a child, their experiences were under generally not having a choice, not being able to develop independence.
Hmm.
Everything was
Right.
dictated to them. They never really understood all, again, conflict resolution. That was the one thing that was missing for them. So as a man, often the trauma isn't as heavy as it is for a dismissive. The problems that the dismissive face, and that was your original question, is about the dismissive, is when they attract an anxious, preoccupied man, the man doesn't know how to be masculine. And then, without any prompting or any suggestion, not even realizing that they're doing it, a dismissive avoidant will step up into
Right.
her masculine and then obviously not have the ability to go back into her feminine energy and express her 20,000 words a day and feel as if she's being supported and being led. You know, when she pushes,
Yeah.
the man should have the masculinity to say, okay, no, this is the firm ground here. He doesn't know how to do that, so she does it. We have a role reversal. It's not natural biologically. Animosity builds. So the main breakdown and the main problem in a relationship with the dismissive avoidant is that they appear to be the aggressor. They appear to be the narcissist, but all they're doing is acting in a defensive way, doing their
Mm.
best to maintain safety for themselves because the guy can't provide it.
Mm.
That's how they're so misunderstood. Oh my goodness, are they accused of so many things and they just go, how are you accusing me of these things? I'm absolutely doing my best here.
But it's just misunderstood.
Totally. But they
Mm.
misunderstand themselves more than anything else. And if all of this was explained to them, they go, oh, didn't know that because
That
they
makes
can't see.
sense. Mm. So, can you just tell me a little bit more about if you could pick a couple of things that really pulled you into coaching, what would they be?
Yes, my journey just
Hmm.
steered me towards it almost involuntarily. It
Right.
was um, like I was moving. I wasn't really. I was stabbing in the dark after the end of my 26-year relationship, my marriage, when it broke down
Hmm.
in the end. She'd had enough of me, and fair enough. You know, I was pointing the finger. I was complaining about everything that she was doing wrong. Yes, she was doing some things that she shouldn't have been, but it was, I hadn't provided really the environment that she needed for her own healing as well. And at the end of that, I was desperate to grow. I
Mm.
needed I needed to know why I was there for so long, what kind of environment I would expect my children to be still in because three of them were with her. Um, and to understand because for an anxious preoccupied, understanding the way the mind works is something that of a preoccupation itself. It was actually a survival instinct as a child because to understand everyone around you was to preempt their behavior and keep yourself
Mm.
safe. So it became a part of my inherent characteristics. So to understand everything and absorb also an autistic thing. Once you really engage with something, you absorb everything. And when I found that I was beginning to understand so much more, suddenly it was just like amazing
Clicked,
how
all
fast it.
clicked.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my God, oh, and then eventually you come to the end of it and you recognize that just how much I've contributed to the problems instead
Isn't
of
that
pointing.
interesting when you start to become super curious, especially when you're super curious about yourself? You start to answer some questions that you've had, I guess, for a long
Interesting because
time.
that doesn't start off that way.
Mm.
At the beginning, you're not interested in yourself at all because of, you're insecure. What value do I have? You
Yeah.
find value everywhere else. You find value in other romantic interests. I did
Hmm.
sequentially, and anyone who can keep me company, because the worst thing that I could imagine was facing myself. You know,
Right.
loneliness by definition is the fear of being with yourself because you don't like yourself very much. You'd rather have someone else there, anyone else. You're not fussy. You'll take in someone who's toxic. I don't care. And generally, you'll find toxic people because they're the only ones who will accept someone so insecure.
And now that you've spent this time rediscovering yourself and spending time with yourself, do you actually enjoy being with yourself a lot more?
More than anything,
Yeah.
I look forward to it. I get excited about having me time
Yeah.
and the meeting your own needs. There's three pillars that I build in each of my clients. The first one is repressed emotions, re-expression. The second is words and actions, and the third one is meeting your own needs, and that includes, healthy boundaries around the things that you're doing for yourself. Spending time with yourself is a massive one of
Mhm.
those. The probably the pinnacle one, actually the most important.
Well, that kind of brings me to another question that I have, which is, and this is a longer one, so I have them in front of me so I can read them so I don't get
Sure.
sidetracked. But what kind of man typically shows up at your doorstep for coaching, and what's often going to be going on beneath the surface?
Right. Well, on the actual surface, before we dig, obviously they need an opportunity to express what they're feeling, what they're thinking, and
Mm,
that always takes some time. You're giving them an opportunity to do that. After a while, once they start repeating themselves, bang's an opportunity then to go, okay, I'm just going to push you back for a moment there. And under my old model of behavior, which was borderline personality disorder, I had only the ability to focus on one thing at a time. So if someone presented something to me, I'd immediately deal with it then, or the idea was gone. Now, and this is for anyone who's suffering from the same issues that I had, to understand you can actually remodel and you can create a new characteristic, a new ability to hold a thought like a dismissive does and put it aside and come back to it. So when a client goes through 10, 15 ideas, I can recall them all sequentially.
mhm,
It's a new art, a new ability. It's something we can all do. So when they do that, then very quickly I can go back and say, let's just break down some of these throwaway ideas you're throwing at me. What is very typical of the male clients that come to me is, well, the attachment style for men generally is anxious, preoccupied. There's not many dismissives. Reason for that is because the abuse is far more severe for a dismissive.
mhm,
And women tend to fall into that category more, being the weaker sex, being more targeted for sexual abuse. Whereas the guys, they have a limited emotional connection with the carers, especially in this generation, Generation X, of my year, of my generation, because we were told to, have a cup of cement and harden up. We held our
mm,
expression. We weren't authentic to ourselves. We adjusted for a parent. And
yeah,
then obviously, if we're not worthy enough to express our own emotion, that lowers our value in our own eyes. If we're unable to see our own value, then we'll look for other people to tell us we're okay. And this is where the whole basis of the problem is that I get almost all of my clients from is they don't see their own value. They
mm,
look to their partner to give them value. They're saying, here are my emotions. I'm going to hand them to you. Please be good to me with them. And then when their dismissive partners had enough of having to support them, unrealistically, having to tell them how to be a man, as a woman telling a man how to be a man, ridiculous. Then she's had enough, obviously, and she's dropped his emotions bang on the floor, and suddenly he's got nothing. He's like, I was okay for ages. And then suddenly it went, yeah, of course you were, because she was holding your emotions. And then when she let
mm.
go, they hit the floor and you didn't know what to do. They didn't see that.
No, it's interesting, Stephen, when we think about single parent homes and young men being in single parent homes with mothers
Yes.
and not having good positive male role models. Um, Long term, what do you think the impact of that is?
Well, it very much depends on the nature and characteristics of the mother.
Hmm.
If the mother has introduced um, her own poor behavior into the environment, in other words, allowing certain characteristics and being not being good to herself, the model obviously that she's promoting is of low value for her. And anyone who treats himself badly, it's like a rule book for me. If I treat myself badly, the whole world will see, okay, that's how Steve gets treated. I'll treat him the same way. So women who are looking for, low value men to support them because they can't do it themselves, you understand why they fall into that gap, though. Obviously, they need that kind of support. They're just looking in the wrong place.
Mm,
Nonetheless, the effect is to bring in low value into the property into the environment. So what does the child learn as a girl? That's the model. What are they going to do? They're going to repeat it.
mm,
This is how you behave. As a man, as a boy, observing how your mother is treated, well, he's going to know exactly how not to treat a woman as well. That's a major problem.
yeah. Yeah, it is. And I, it took me a long time to recognize that when I was raising children. So that one, when I did pick it up, really hit home.
On the other side of things, you might have a very, very positive thinking and forward thinking and progressive mother who's very protective and taking care of things and doing it all right.
Mm,
Still not the whole picture
yeah,
because you don't have a guy there who's treating her right, buying her flowers, making her the priority, giving her a break, taking her on a date, being affectionate, all of those things. And obviously, that model of conflict resolution, teamwork is still missing.
yeah,
So the child, even in a positive environment, single parent, is still missing out.
mm, yeah. Can we talk a little bit about masculinity, emotions, and inner work?
Sure.
So, in your experience, what's one emotion men may struggle to face? And how does this show up in everyday life, do you think?
Okay, let me just dig into my own memories here because I was one who had no masculinity at all, which might be hard to believe because I'm extremely confident now. But it's learned behavior. I've learned how to, through obviously, once you take on your own value, you recognize it.
Yeah.
Um, but the one emotion, the one insecurity that I struggled with the most was loneliness.
Okay.
It was a repressed emotion for a very long time too, because it was so overwhelming. I actually pushed it down and felt nothing but numbness.
Mm,
And a lot of my clients will say the same thing. And as they begin to recover, that hits them the hardest. And it's a massively overwhelming when the emotions start to find the way up when they present themselves to be expressed. It's the hardest one to deal with.
right. Okay. And that shows up in everyday life by certain behaviors, does it?
Yes, when we're talking about the go-to for an insecure, we're
Hmm.
talking about um, pursuit behavior. We're talking about the opposite of law of attraction. There's the six signs of emotional dysregulation, which I teach my clients, especially on the spectrum. Things like they're all coercive and demanding and controlling types of behaviors. When you're emotionally unregulated, you try to run after somebody
Hmm.
to trap them in to a cage and pull them back to you, which is obviously not sustainable. They're not coming of their own choice. They may come if they're insecure. A secure person will just stonewall you and walk away, but you'll manage to trap a few insecure people who will then treat you badly, and in the end, the relationship will end anyway. But that's the only way they know is to get anyone to come and pay any attention to them is by coercion
Right.
and control. And obviously, those are kind of narcissistic traits. Everyone has moments of narcissism. It's part of human nature. The
Hmm.
difference between those who consider to be those with narcissistic personality disorder and the rest of us is whether it's the exception or the rule.
Okay. And you talk about men stepping into leadership of their own lives. What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, anything where subconscious repatterning is involved, which is everything, starts with the recognition that any change cannot be supported by emotion. We cannot expect our emotions to fall into line with our behavior until it becomes a pattern. So
Mhm.
a lot of the mistakes that men make or anyone makes when they're trying to make a change in their life is they wait for a day where they feel like making the change. And then it goes okay for a week, and then they have a day they don't feel like it and it's gone again. See, we can't be dependent on our emotions to support the change. We can only be disciplined enough to say, this is the change I wish to make and continue to do it, irrespective of how I feel day in, day out, until it becomes a new pattern. And what we should recognize is that once the pattern has been established, 21 days, 66 days, somewhere in there,
Mhm.
then after that becomes a substantiated and well trod pattern, that's when the emotions start to support it.
They
Massive
have to be
things
very
change.
consciously aware of that, don't they?
Yes, but if no one teaches you it, then you've got no idea. So you don't know. It's like stabbing in the dark. Okay, I'm making this change. It seems like it's unsustainable. I'm running out of energy. Oh, I may as well just give up. They don't
Mm.
realize there is a light at the end of the tunnel they can't see yet. When the emotions start to support the new behavior, amazing things start to happen. First up, the self-worth starts to kick in. The self-validation, the enjoying your own company. And as well as that, some amazing things happen, obviously, around relationships very clearly. If you're seeing your own value and you'd be quite happy to be with yourself every day, you're not in a hurry to introduce low quality people into your life. You pick
Mm.
and choose and say, this is a good quality person. Yes. Everyone else, I would have said yes before because I was so lonely. I'm just going to say no, thanks very much. I'll spend time by myself today,
So
which
you
is
encourage people to spend to spend a conscious amount of time by themselves so that
that
they can
is part
start to
of
practice.
that is
Yeah.
part of the second pillar
Is that
that I
challenge, is that a
teach.
big challenge
It's the
for
biggest
some?
one. It is the
Yeah.
biggest one,
Okay.
but it's necessary. And it's amazing when I have clients who have a breakthrough and they'll call me midweek and go, Steve, you were right. I just feel amazing spending time. I went out on my bike or I went for a walk or I went fishing and I was like, before I would have gone, gee, I wish someone was here. And then I was like, I was with myself and I was just staring at the water and ripples and thinking, this is amazing. And these breakthroughs come through. Well, that's when the emotion kicks in and start to support the higher value behavior.
Yeah.
And two things happen. Not only do you see your own worth, but everyone watching you being good to you.
Yeah.
Like I said before, the rule book for me is how I treat me. The user manual for me. If I'm treating me well, then everyone else will look at me and go, better respect him. He's respecting himself. That's where it starts.
And
So you
friends that might not have been spending as much time with someone will recognize some changes. They might not know what's changed, but they go, something's different about him.
well, what's generally the rule is that the guy will stop spending as much time trying to get people's attention. Suddenly, people will just drop off the landscape.
Yeah.
The people that
Your
really wasn't
circle
worthwhile
changes.
having
You,
around. Yeah, sometimes they're right down to very, very few people, and
yeah.
that's okay. Suddenly, it's
Mm.
like, well, I've only got one or two now, and I'm fine with that. If they all went away, I'd be okay too. Start again, so what?
Yeah.
Because you're actually losing the people who aren't contributing. They're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
takers. They're just takers. And these guys are givers. They're givers because they think the only way they can get validation is if someone recognizes their contribution to their life instead of
Mm.
their contribution to their own life.
Yeah. So, how do you create safety for men who've never been taught how to be vulnerable or even what that means? So, I guess that the opposite, who don't know what it means and then how to become vulnerable.
It's a muscle that must be exercised
Yeah.
because no one knows what it looks like. So what's a banana taste like if you hadn't eaten one?
Yeah.
It's like going on a date. I've never dated before. Okay, I'll get used to that, right? It's an unknown. Anything that's unknown is going to be scary. It's a subconscious thing. If anything that we have done in the past is a known experience, whether it's a good or a bad one, we'll be drawn into it. We'll just continue that same behavior. This is new. Being vulnerable is one of the scariest new things to do ever. It isn't necessarily new. They've done it in the past and it's backfired on them. So they do have a model and it's not a good one. So then learning how to be vulnerable in circumstance where they're being very selective about who and where they're being vulnerable. You teach them those principles first and then give them an
Mm.
opportunity. First,
So,
maybe with a coach or people they've nominated.
yeah. So something just came to my brain then, which is so what does being vulnerable in a healthy way look like? And what does being vulnerable in an unhealthy way look like?
It's a very interesting question.
Mm,
What a lot of men, we'll talk about the unhealthy way first. A lot of guys or anyone who's repatterning falls into the category or the mistake of is allowing certain relationships to be an exception to their growth. That seems like a weird thing to say. What I'm saying is that they'll behave in the new pattern they're trying to form almost all of the time, but they'll say, well, this friend over here is okay to hear all of my BS. So I'm going to go to that person, be vulnerable with them because I need to be vulnerable. I'm feeling like it's something I just need to get out. And what they start doing is exercising the old pattern with that one or two people.
mhm.
And that's dangerous because what they're doing is strengthening the old pattern when they're trying to build a new one. So that's unhealthy vulnerability. And
Right.
usually the people who will accommodate the old pattern aren't going to be good for you. They'll encourage it. They want to bitch about somebody. They want to, talk negatively about various things, and you end up walking away from a conversation like that feeling so much worse.
Wishing you didn't even have the conversation.
Correct. And you
Mm,
think, well, I was just trying to be vulnerable. Being vulnerable in a healthy way is to be vulnerable to people who will encourage your positive thoughts. Sure, let you express, let you be emotional, but positively frame everything. Talking to
mhm.
people who will call you out on things in a gentle way and say, you're okay to feel that. How about we think about it in a new perspective? So surrounding yourself with people who will build you and not allow you to be negative or run things down. Positive vulnerability.
Yeah.
It also, for men especially, builds masculinity, especially when they're around other masculine men who can say, here's a healthy habit for you to introduce.
Mm,
Then they can take that back to their relationships, potentially their families, and maintain that masculinity and know their worth going back to
yeah.
their partners. And they'll see that change.
Fantastic. Okay. So that leads me into some self-awareness and transformation. So, what do most, in your opinion, what do most men discover about themselves that totally surprises them through the work that you're doing with them?
The one thing that surprises the men the most is meeting their own needs through healthy boundaries.
Right. Can you give me an example of what that looks like?
What the one thing that surprises them the most is when they say, "Okay, it's the one thing that actually builds your self-worth greater than anything else is meeting your own needs." And that seems ambiguous too, is all these terms, but what it means is that I recognize my values. This is something that's important to me, just as an idea. And within a relationship, you go to someone who isn't potentially aware or maybe acting contrary to that value,
Hmm.
and then saying to them in a non-coercive and non-controlling way, because we've left that behind, this is not part of our pattern. Um, this is something that's important to me, to my friend or to my partner. This is something that's important to me. I would really appreciate your support in it. I'm not going to make you do anything. You can make up your own mind, but this is really a firm line for me. if we're going to move forward in this relationship, this is the direction I'd like to head. Is that okay with you? You can make up your own mind. If you're not willing to, I understand we may have to part ways. And that's what I describe to any client as putting themselves into a win-win situation.
Mhm.
Either their cohort or friend or partner adheres to those values, recognizes the worth of the person and the behavior, and says, yes, I will align myself with you. And then they win. Or
Yeah.
the person goes, I disagree with that, and then they leave your life. You win both ways. One's a little tough, but in the end, it means that that person is not behaving in a way contrary to your values within your boundary, which causes
Mm.
massive anxiety for most people. It's like this person's doing this thing and I'm just not saying anything about it and it's causing me trouble. And meet your own needs, express what your expectations are. And when a person recognizes you and says, I value you and I agree with your values and I will align myself, that's you meeting your own needs and you literally taking back control
Mm.
and building yourself and your self-worth. And it's the individual most powerful thing you can do for building up your own self-esteem.
And I think too that when someone's learning to do that and they have that when there's that fear of loneliness, but they're going, I've got to set some boundaries for myself because I need to look after myself. But in the back of my mind, I'm going, if I set these boundaries, it could be the end of the relationship. And that's really scary. So there's lots of fear around that, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
that falls into okay, out of the six signs of dysregulation, which I teach. I haven't gone through them all here, but it's the last one. It falls under neediness. When a person feels that they need the company of someone so much that they're not prepared to express their needs to them,
mm,
that they will just allow their behavior. That's, oh, I recognize that company with this person is more important than my values. I'm putting my
yeah.
worth more on that person than I am in myself. It's neediness. And when you're starting to build your self-worth, you've got to turn that behavior around. You have to recognize by actions and words your own worth and value, and put yourself in a position where you're prepared to walk away from a person who isn't aligned with your values.
Mm. Mm. Do you get when you're teaching your clients, the methodology of being able to put themselves first and be able to identify where they're not, and do you sometimes get some pushback? Have you ever had a client that went, no, 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 I can't do what you're
Oh yeah,
teaching me?
100%. Look,
Yeah,
we're talking about those who have borderline personality disorder, and you have to match their energy.
yeah,
As soon as I had that, I still have it. A
yeah.
subconscious pattern never gets deleted. It's always
Mm,
there. I've just created a new pattern that is more dominant, so I don't get pulled back into it anymore.
mm,
Occasionally, I'll feel the tug of it, when I'm getting triggered, but I know that I can make a choice because I've
yeah,
created and built a new subconscious pattern for me that is the very much dominant one. But I am very, very averse and very intimately familiar with the behavior of a fearful, avoidable person, borderline personality disorder. And when they
yeah.
start to use things like throwaway comments like, oh, I could never do this, and then suddenly move on to another subject, I go, hold on, explain that. But they can't explain it because they're
Mm,
so used to being able to be aggressive and say whatever they want and get away with it and then move along, throwaway
mm,
comment. And then I'll call them up on it because I used to do that and I
yeah.
see it immediately,
So you can identify it really quickly.
very quickly. And they're like, "Ooh, shoot, I can't get away with crap with this guy." And yes, they don't like it, but in the end, they go away thinking to themselves, this is a challenge I need if they're
Yeah.
progressive. Occasionally, very occasionally, I get some who just refuse to do the work, which case, obviously, you can't help them. They haven't really decided to make any changes. They just want to show up and have Steve fix them, which obviously doesn't work.
Yeah. Have you had someone go, no, 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 I'm not doing this, and then months later come back going, all right, I needed this. I'm
Yes.
just resistant.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah,
Those
fantastic.
those are the those are pretty well. The anxious preoccupieds, no, they're very involved, they're very progressive. Generally, once they're given the keys, they want to absorb and grow.
Yeah.
A fearful avoidant will struggle, but the thing is that's what I was, so I'm able to really bring someone alongside. The dismissives are the ones that do that the most. They need to go away and spend time to reassess, find safety, and then come back. And yes,
Okay.
100% they do that. And it's necessary. It's part of their journey. It's perfectly natural and actually important to allow it.
Okay.
They can't find their safety when they're
Yeah.
overwhelmed.
Yeah. Um, I like this question.
Okay.
What's the cost of not doing the inner work? And what's at stake for a man who keeps pushing it all down?
Okay. It's an unknown quantity if you're trying to explain to someone at the beginning of the journey what they're looking forward to.
Yeah.
Um, if I could describe what they'd be missing out on, I put it in terms in something that's familiar to them.
Hmm.
In New South Wales, we have AVOs where, if there's someone who's taken an AVO out on someone, then they have a set of rules they're not allowed to break, communication and proximity. How about when you go from being super insecure and you know pursuit behavior, unregulated, not knowing how to communicate, not being able to meet your own needs, to being a walking, talking AVO. What that means is that low value people will see the way that you're treating yourself. You'll be so calm within a situation that you won't be thinking 10 minutes later, oh, gee, I wish I'd said that. You'll be able to think of it in the moment. You'll literally be able to call people
Mm.
out within a state of calm, compassion, and curiosity right in that very moment and go, bang, and suddenly you'll be the scariest person in the world to someone who's trying to trap you or try to coerce or try to control. They won't want to be around you at all. You will absolutely repel low value people and you will attract high value people. That's what to look forward to. It's
Hmm.
a great way to explain because for an insecure person who's just chasing after validation constantly, instead of chasing after it, it's coming to you. And not only is it coming to you, but you don't even need it because you've done it for yourself. So that's the closest thing I can do to describe an incredibly ambiguous concept to a person who's never experienced it.
You know, something that's just come up for me right now is I remember back in 2012, I was trekking Kokoda, and as you're walking and you're really pushing yourself mentally, I actually was going through a forgiveness process. I was forgiving, and I won't say who I was forgiving or what I was forgiving, but I was going through a forgiveness process. And
Wasn't me,
I'd
that's
all,
fine.
sorry.
Wasn't me, that's fine. That's fine.
And I was also, really working through some big stuff and always needed validation from these particular people. When I got back from Kokoda, it was completely gone. I did not need that validation anymore. For no other reason that I'd just gone through this process myself, and something that I'd had for such a long time was just completely gone.
How much time did you spend by yourself in Kokoda?
Well, it was 9 days, and I mean, you're walking with other people, but I didn't know anyone. Yeah.
See, so you were alone with your own thoughts and you weren't
Oh,
being
yeah.
distracted.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is purely semantic processing in
Yeah.
its greatest form. Where
Yeah.
are you extroverted and introverted?
I can be a bit of both, but mostly I was mostly extroverted. Now I'm
Okay.
more,
So so if your natural inclination is extroversion, then you're able to be amongst people but be alone. It's not
yeah.
something that introverts can do because we're constantly focusing on trying to connect subconsciously with everyone's breathing patterns, the gait of their walk. We don't know we're doing it, but as introverts, this is our survival instinct. An extrovert is more cut off from that and is able to be alone in a crowd. So that for you, you would have been absolutely in the best position just to allow thoughts to be fully processed, to close trauma loops,
Mm.
to release emotion that had been repressed. That's fantastic. That's highly recommended.
And that's where boundaries started to change dramatically.
Mhm.
So, yeah, yeah. Thank you for that one. Um, what do you say to men who think asking for help is weakness?
I would say that they're right according to their experience,
Yeah,
but
I like
unfortunately,
that.
their experience is not accurate according
Yeah.
to all experiences, because they haven't had an opportunity to ask the right people. This is, of course, asking for help for a lot of men is something they won't do because they haven't had someone that would give them good advice.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I grew up and the saying around was, men don't cry, men don't show
Yeah.
weakness, men
Yeah.
don't speak to people.
Men are desperate for a connection where they can do all those things. They are
Yeah.
desperate. And to be given simply permission to be able to do those things, to be immediately comfortable to do it, boy, it just comes like a flood. It's
Mm.
like floodgates opening. Suddenly I'm hearing from these clients because being empathetic and understanding and being able to tell someone their own stories and then going, oh my God, this guy understands. I'm going to tell him everything. To once they start, they're desperate to. So if they go through life and they do find opportunities to express, and then people push them back because it's too much.
Mm.
So they learn that pattern that, oh, people don't want to hear me. They don't want to know. So they do hold it back, but they're desperate. There's they're just waiting for that opportunity. As soon as that opportunity comes, it all comes out.
Yeah, and I guess too, like to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to be able to speak, your truth, and then if you're shut down, you're then, not going to want to do that again.
Yes, of course.
I want to talk now about legacy and impact, and you know, eh, how does the coaching ripple into other areas of your life, like fatherhood, relationships, careers?
It flows both ways. It's been incredible through my journey as a coach, especially dealing with people who were just like I was,
Hmm.
to recognize parts of my own journey that aren't developed enough yet. And then recognizing their behavior as something that maybe I'm still doing, or at least I haven't found all of my triggers yet. And then I'm seeing certain behaviors and going, oh, yeah, I did that the other day. I didn't even notice. Maybe I'm still doing that. But it really does build up, um, um, I think, a resistance to certain behaviors when you see them do it and you go, oh, it really ticks me off when they do that. And you go, oh, I used to do that all the time. It builds a strength in you to make sure that you never go back to it because you see it yourself firsthand so much. So
Mm.
that really, really does support your relationships personally because everyone benefits from your own growth.
Yeah,
The way that the coaching has just assisted me in my own. And then obviously my relationships. Oh, without one relationship I have in particular that has been, there's a couple actually, or three, that have been incredibly useful as far as learning um, about the dynamics between ADD, ADHD, dismissive avoidant, anxious preoccupied, fearful avoidant, all of those things that I've learned firsthand by making all the mistakes and getting
yeah,
it all wrong and having the most patient and resilient people, women, who've been prepared to help me through this process. We're talking about progressive people here, progressive learning people, because obviously you can come up against these attachment styles, and if they're not interested in growing together with you or by themselves, they're no use. That was my 26-year marriage. She wasn't interested in growing. I know I
Mm,
didn't provide a environment, but I was desperate for growth. As soon as the relationship was over, I hit my stride. But yeah, the relationships that have given me, without these relationships, and one in particular, I would never be a coach. I would
mm.
never have found my way. And she said to me once, it was a pivotal moment in my life in a gong cha shop, and we were having like break apart um, uh, bacon bread, or sorry, ham bread,
Pull apart.
and yeah, yeah, that's the one, pull apart. And she said to me, Steve, stop spending your special energy on things that don't deserve it.
Oof, I like
And that was
that.
the single most powerful turning point and pivot in my life.
Could you say that again?
Stop spending your special energy on things that don't deserve it.
Wow. I like that. I really like that.
She often comes up with, and strangely enough, English is not her first language. She comes up with amazing little anecdotes that I never forget of
Yeah.
wisdom.
Yeah.
As a dismissive avoidant who could see my shadow, and we haven't talked about shadows, but this is an amazing strength between a dismissive and an anxious that each other can serve each other this way. And I can probably speak a bit about that because that was your question about the relationships and finding these people who can speak into you and
Mm.
say things to you that um, come from a place of love in both ways is well, we're built for connection. As much as we talk about not being lonely and spending time by yourself and being okay with your own company, great. 100% love that. But we are built for connection. This is why we have vibrations. This is why when we're our highest state, our magnetic field stretches to 9 meters and people feel us coming through a wall before we've gone through the door. We're built for it. Our particles stay connected to each other for 3 months after someone's left our presence if we're of a high vibration. Anyway, we are built for connection. It's necessary. And if we
Yeah.
find the right people, then we build each other.
Yeah. Because you know, when you hang around someone and you walk away from that experience and you feel completely drained, like it just, for me, I can go, that feels really yucky, right? I know what that's like. And then the opposite is like, oh my God, that was the energy there was so amazing. And I
Well, if the
really,
energy's right, you both end up walking away with more energy than you brought. It
yeah,
multiplies.
yeah, yeah. So I have one more for you.
Sure.
If you could leave one message in the hearts of men listening to this today, what would it be?
That anxiety is not a death sentence. This one's extremely personal to me. I thought that I would die with a knot in my stomach because I
Mhm.
thought it was part of who I am. When you say things like, I am a drunk, or you say, I am a troublemaker, I am an anxious person, this is taking on responsibility of an identity that is completely false. You can say that I am a person who has anxiety, I am a person who gets drunk, but you're a person. The behavior doesn't define you.
Mm.
The condition doesn't define you. You are not connected to it. It's not permanent. You can move on from it. You can grow. And on the day where I woke up and I waited for that knot of anxiety to hit my stomach, as it did always every day after 3 seconds of bliss, and then realizing how shit my life was. And that one day when I woke up and it didn't hit, and I'm still waiting, I'm going, what is going on? This is so strange. Surely any moment it's going to hit me. And it didn't come. And then I realized for the first time I didn't have to die with this. It's not a part of who I am. It actually is a condition that I had beaten simply through the same process that you went through on the Kokoda track. where you had
Mm,
expressed and released emotion enough to the point where there was a significant change in your self-worth
yeah.
and everything started to change. And we're talking about somatics. If we're going to go to a further extension, when your emotions start to support the new behavior that you've built, amazing things start to happen health wise. Your body starts to fall in line with your new pattern as well. And suddenly your health issues disappear too. It's, yeah, it's anxiety is not a death sentence. It's not even a part of who you are. And you can walk away from it. That's what I want to leave men with.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate this conversation. It's been very, very powerful, very enlightening. And to our listeners there, thank you so much for joining us. And if someone wanted to reach out to you, Steve, how would they do that?
www.emotionalwisdom.com.au, or you'll
Mhm.
find me on Facebook, Emotional Wisdom. You'll find my page. And yeah, I've got a TikTok under the same moniker. So yeah, go ahead. I've got a decent following. I'm starting to build. I'm really
I,
enjoying the
I think
content as
I've
well.
seen you on TikTok many
Sure.
times now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And until next time, stay resilient, everyone.